Hi everyone, sorry about that. I had the time change mess me up. It's still on my calendar is at 1 p.m. I'm really excited for Erin to present today. Erin and I met back when she was doing this really cool project and building community for an e-commerce platform. And she created this amazing virtual mall that was super fun. And we had these video calls where some of the direct-to-consumer brands were doing giveaways. And it was just awesome to get to meet so many people in this direct-to-consumer community. So Erin really introduced me to that amazing community where I've ended up making a ton of friends. So I'm super, super excited for Erin's presentation today. She's accomplished so much even since then, and started some really cool communities. And I know her presentation today is going to be awesome and interactive. So I'm very, very excited for it.
Perfect. Hey, first off, welcome. Julie, thanks for your patience. I was like, I'm always navigating Zoom rooms, and I feel like, aren't we all nowadays, where it's like, we're all like, are we in the waiting room? Is my mic on? Like, are we weird? Like, there's always this like getting used to it. So like, I want us to all breathe in and breathe out, because I'm sorry, I know you have another Zoom call, but hopefully this can be a lot of fun. So like Julie said, like, one, also just really happy to be connected to her, and I think she's just an amazing person. But hopefully we can have some fun today. So I'm going to be dropping a link. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Miro. We'll be doing like a little bit of the future of community. But if you're not familiar with Miro, you are more than welcome to follow along. If you are, you know, it's kind of a fun, like, it's like an interactive slide deck, which we're all going to be editing together. Personally, I think especially now we're all in one more Zoom call. And so anytime that we can break the Zoom call mold, I'm going to challenge you to do so. Like, how can we have back and forth conversations? Like, especially when we're building communities, like, we're building relationships, not giving lectures that we used to fall asleep in our undergrad classrooms in, because let's all be real, those aren't really fun. So I just dropped a link. You guys can all follow along, and you guys can use this and save this for later. So feel free, it's kind of your space as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and let me share my screen.
Make sure that all participants.
That share. Perfect. So you guys can all see where I'm up to. First and foremost, I wanted to kind of give you space. I know today, if you're in the United States, can be a little bit of a crazy day in this week in 2020. I want to open up the floor. How is everyone? You can give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or even I like to use the rage on the top of the screen. So like, I'm doing really well, as if you're at the top of the screen, or you're like, holy cow, I put pants on today. That was the win. Like, how are we feeling? We got some thumbs up. Good. I like to see it. And I think just kind of we always want to set the tone. Like, you don't want to come into a conversation and be like, oh my goodness, this is the greatest day ever. And then realize that everybody's like, Erin, screw you. I don't actually want to talk today. So just kind of being real. Let's all be a little more honest and real as we're kind of growing and building in the space. So this is me. I'm Erin. I'm kind of obsessed with the creator economy. So I actually hold a master's degree in academic research in determining the viability of the creator economy. I've worked in e-commerce startups. I've worked in blockchain technology. I'm currently doing some work in both beauty and neuroscience simultaneously, which seems a bit contradictory, but it's a little weird. And that's kind of what I like to do. I love early stage startups. So anything from like seed stage to A is kind of my hotspot where I like to build and thrive. I think you get a lot of fun opportunities, and when you're building in that space, you get to do a lot of things that you would never get to do at a larger organization. So I like kind of playing in that. Here's kind of my spot if you want to check out what I'm up to. That's what I'd invite you to do. But I would love you to take a second. If you haven't used the little text tool, go ahead, use the text tool so we can all get to know each other. So one thing that's really important about community building, as you guys have probably heard in a couple other sessions, it's really important that we're building network to network relationship. And I want to make sure that this is the best use of your time as well. So tell me who you are, tell me what kind of communities you're interested in. If you're new to the scene, or you're like, I've been doing this for 20 years and I'm a seasoned pro. So fill in, tell me who you are, a little bit about yourself, and if you want to share links to your pet's Instagram, I think that's a totally acceptable thing to do here. Or if you're like, this is my social accounts that I run professionally, great. If you want to drop your personal ones, let me know. This is when we need some like Jeopardy music, like.
I mean, I could sing.
Yeah, I mean, I should not. You guys don't want me singing. We've got Julie, we've got Jackson, Tessa here, hey Nick. Ooh, I like some community governance. That's a good one. Perfect. So we've got some building, and the cool thing about Miro, this is like my love letter to Miro, is this will all be saved. So if you're like, oh my goodness, Julie said something really awesome in that talk, and I want to go hit her up to follow up that, you guys will all be able to do so right here. So that's really kind of awesome. Tessa loved the college athletic stuff. I was a former college athlete as well.
What did you play?
I was a swimmer.
Oh, awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Where did you go?
I went to the University of Nevada, so in Reno.
Okay. Gotcha.
So yeah, I went all the way there from, now I'm in New York, so kind of took a weird little route.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Couple agency folks. Awesome. Cool. Well, it's really awesome to kind of see you guys building, and it looks like we're kind of building all different types of communities. We see a lot of product-led communities, which is really awesome to see. Love seeing some open source communities. I'm a huge nerd over there, so kind of like to see what you guys are building. If you guys need a few more moments, feel free to take it. I'm going to quickly just kind of keep moving on. So first and foremost, I think it's kind of irresponsible for me to come in here and be like, community's been around forever, but because it kind of has, but in some ways it also hasn't. We're experiencing a bit of a community boom right now. So more than ever, we're seeing VC funds, micro funds, products, tools, creations, all obsessed with this community. I think all of a sudden 2020 hit and we were like, cool pandemic, cool chaotic election, cool community, which is, I don't think is a, it's not quite so much a coincidence. As I keep moving the board and not the thing. I want you to kind of quickly, what do you think of when you think of community boom? Is it too much hype? Is it too much, put a meme? I'm here for all the meme games. Whatever you think. Feel free to shout it out if you would rather shout it out. I'm an open platform person. Some people like to do things. Do it your own way. I think when we think of community boom, and there's no right or wrong answer here. So if you're like, I don't know, I don't want to put any, like, I will be the first person to make fun of myself. So, don't feel like you're like, looking for a right or wrong answer. I'm going to share a meme that I've been laughing at probably way too much. I'm a not take yourself seriously person. Sorry, I didn't mean to like smush someone's text box. Cool, explosive growth in communities, that's a good one. Community-based business is becoming a better business model, that's a good one. Reaction to kind of, social media has taken us over, yes. Think of companies that are only saying they're doing it like content marketing a few years back that are doing it really well for sure. I put my funny little meme down because I'm very much like, brace yourself. Like everybody, some people who get into community are like, I'm going to get all the leads and I'm going to get all the resources and I'm going to do it. And it's like people, it's like the content marketing. I think someone put it very well, where it's like, press button, go. And we'll find out, we're going to break down a little bit of that myth of like, if that's reality, or it's kind of a little more of a myth. So kind of zooming into the topic of community, like, yes, there's a lot of really good resources available. There's a lot of really awesome stuff out there. So I'm going to zoom us down a little bit. So there's kind of, this is a hype cycle, if you guys are ever familiar with this chart. So usually you often use this to kind of talk about emerging technologies. So when we see this hype cycle, you'll see this, how you have like an expectations in time. Usually it's kicked off by some sort of innovation trigger. So we all of a sudden started talking about it, so on and so forth. So I would honestly put like probably Facebook's start, when Facebook was like, creation is kind of like looking at new ways of building community online. The concept of community has been around forever. We've gathered, used communities for churches and different ways. Anytime you got a group of people together, that's kind of how we've been structured for since the olden days. So kind of, if you had to pick, I'll use your mouse and cursor if you're doing it, if you had to pick a spot on this kind of hype cycle, where would you guys put yourself? Where do you think community is in this hype cycle? You can go ahead and hover your mouse over where you think it will be. If we had to tell us where we're at in this hype cycle. Are you closer to the innovation point, or are we kind of leveling out to this plateau of productivity? Cool. Yeah, and I think a lot of you guys are right on. So I would kind of clarify us like up. I haven't decided if we're before the peak of inflated expectations or afterwards, but it's definitely coming. We're right around that period of, you know, you hear those blog posts that are like, community is going to solve all your problems. And it's actually maybe not so much. I see kind of someone over here floating on the slope of enlightenment. Who would say that? Anybody wants to elaborate? If not, that's okay. And so I think like, but again, there's a lot of stuff out there on the community, but it's kind of making sure that we're doing communities worth our salt. So there's a lot of stuff out there right now, which is great. Things that we need to keep aware of in that peak of inflated expectations is sometimes people remember blockchain in 2008. It's a similar kind of story. People will tell you it's going to solve absolutely everything under the sun, and it's probably not. So kind of thinking through it a little more purposely. I come from an academic background and then worked in startups. So I have this weird blend of like what we can learn from the world's past of us. So there's two kind of things in history who have kind of evolved what we think of community. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel, folks. Like this is something we can learn from in the past. So there's two kind of key inventions. One, the rise of the printing press. So there's really cool. When the printing press happened, a lot more people had access to tools and technology than ever before, which is awesome. We increased distribution. Awesome. We also increased how fast misinformation spread. Not awesome. So that's a bit of a problem that came out as we create new tools and technologies. So as we're creating a lot of new tools for communities and we're creating new ways of interacting online, I think there's a new social network every week from beta to, you know, a live functioning one. We need to start thinking about the ways that we're interacting within these communities and thinking of how information could possibly spread. So kind of moving this model forward. We saw this a lot. I love watching like the free software movement or the open source software movement. There's a lot of really interesting stuff coming out about that right now. And one thing that we really learned from this area is this established the idea that platforms and creators are inseparable. So when we talk about why do people flock to Twitter, it's because there's 1,000,002 people on Twitter. It's because you want to be participating in that content. You want to be engaged with it. You go there because other people are on the platform, which brings more people to the platform, which incentivizes the platform to kind of rebuild itself and create more features. If no people were coming to the platform, would the platform continue to build? It's kind of a weird chicken and egg philosophy way of thinking this. And the other thing that community builders should learn from the open source movement is the community and open source, we both build social norms through doing. So we're learning and by actually creating. It's kind of really hard to build community in a silo. I had a phone call with someone very recently who was like, I have this perfect 17-step community plan. And I'm like, that's great. What have you tested? And they're like, it's a plan. I'm like, awesome. That's the plan. That's part of what you're doing. You need to make sure that you're actually getting out and testing your ideas. And yes, that sometimes means you're going to fall on your face a little bit. It's okay. You'll learn. I think the biggest thing is when we're building communities, we really need to look at solutions that kind of put people first. So one thing that we're seeing as we're kind of on that hype cycle, kind of nearing that top, one thing we need to be very aware of is a lot of people are like getting into this community space, which is a really awesome thing. But let's put a pause. If it's the trendy strategy that you're just picking up because everybody else is doing it, maybe that's not the first reason to kind of get into community. We should be looking for solutions that put people first. So community members are about the community itself. So anytime that you're not serving the folks that are actually interacting with you, maybe we should rethink our guidelines. Awesome. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that on the community boom? Does anybody have any hot takes? Are we kind of on the alignment, or are we kind of running off the things? Do we think that this is a viable solution? Good, I got some thumbs up. Cool, cool. All right, so that's kind of just setting the scene. We're gonna get a little more in depth, and I think this next section, kind of given your guys' background, will be really exciting. So at any time, again, feel free to kind of put a pause or be like, Erin, hold up. Erin, I've got a question, anytime you've got anything going on. So I want to take a moment to talk about product-led communities. So I've spent a lot of my professional career in product-led communities. Like I said, Danielle and I actually met through a product-led community that I ran, which is one, a really fun way of doing things, but also let's kind of think through the different ways that we can run product-led communities. So I want you to jump in here. What product-led communities do you guys know about? And go ahead, if you've got a logo, a text box, tell me about the product-led, and you can even put, this is a place for shameless self-promotion if you've got it. Ooh, Stripe's a great one. I'm actually gonna jump the one that brought us all together today. Ooh, Rome is a really great example. I think of Rome, or I even think of Notion. What they're building is a really good one. And while we're at it, if you have your mic off, you can feel free and tell me a little bit about what you think is kind of like a pro to a product-led communities. Would kind of love to hear it as well. Webflow, another great one. Software is really, I think part of it is because of the desire to, we came out of the open source software movement. We kind of continued to build in that space. And like a lot of those people continue to kind of grow on. Peloton, excellent one. I saw recently someone who got their TikTok clout based on the fact that they made an outfit for someone on Peloton, which is an interesting, weird community byproduct. Circle, great. Awesome, these are all really good ones. So kind of backing it up, what is a product-led community? So anytime you've got a community or an organization with the goal of marketing or promoting their product, it's kind of any community that's derived with that inherent benefit to improve the community or the organization. So yes, the community is there to serve the people that are in that community, but it's ran by an organization. And an organization is incentivized because they're like, oh my goodness, we're gonna get all these people together and do something for the sake of the community. So let's kind of take our example of Peloton. So Peloton does, I remember when they launched the little hashtags for those of you who are using a Peloton, and they were like, okay, we're gonna do, I'm on hashtag craft beer writers, is personally my own, you know, Peloton circle, but we're all kind of gathered under a common goal of building some sort of community or organization that's about that way. So what kind of any motivation that they have. So Peloton is incentivized to make sure that their riders are not just getting a plain bike riding experience. They could sign on and do remote classes anywhere in the world. But what they can't do is recreate, you know, riders can't get their, you know, their instructors tweeting at them, or like I said, in the case of TikTok, these fans that are creating the riders' outfits on TikTok, which is an entirely kind of little crazy, little creative community boost right here. So in the type of product-led communities, we've got three main types if you break it down. So Rosie, Sherry, and I, who's another, I believe she spoke to you guys as well, did three main types of community building. So one, we have the first one, which is the developer communities or DevRel communities. So that's building relationships within each one's, and it looks like my copy pasting didn't work, but that's okay. We'll go from here. We have community as the product. So one thing that happens is when your product is the community itself. So it's communities like MakerPad, that's communities like Reddit sometimes. So kind of anytime you're selling the community itself, her first 100,000 is a really great example of that. And then ambassador communities is the third one. So anytime that you're hyping people up and getting them excited to move forward about a community, that's when you're creating an ambassador community. So there's actually a really good one, No Code Founders. I don't know if anybody is here on that, but it's anytime that people are really excited. Or the Figma design advocates, that's the example of an ambassador community. So when we're kind of talking about DevRel communities, we're talking about those places that make developer relations make developers' lives a little bit easier. They're kind of starting to be a newer thing. So this is a newer community trend that we see popping up. A lot of people in open source are really into this. A lot of people are kind of diving into that area. A community of the product, the first thing you should ask is the person selling me membership into their community? So I know there's a couple ones that are really big. The Wing or WeWork are actually forms of community as the product. So you're buying in not only the service of the co-working space, but they have examples of meetups and events that you can attend. Awesome. So when we're thinking about this, there's a couple pros that we've got on. So I've kind of outlined 5 key pros to product-led communities and running through them really quick. And I would almost like you guys to hover over if you have one, the one isn't on this list, or 2, if you're hovering over one and you're like, oh my goodness, that's the one I want to take for forever, go ahead and hover over that. So they can create a good support and culture of a supporting community and provide a lot of strong network effect. So one thing that we know about community building is a really good community has network relationships, meaning it's not just me talking at you. Hopefully you're building relationships with other people in it. So like I'm talking with Julie, and then maybe Matt's gonna talk to Julie, and we're all gonna kind of build these different relationships with each other. Product-led communities can also help provide better customer experience. So your fans can be like, oh my goodness, I solved this problem on Webflow. I'm gonna turn around and help so-and-so solve this problem on Webflow. They can help both users and product teams identify the different product experts, users, and key early adopters. So when you're doing a product, you can user test with those early community members and be like, guys, do you like our interface to be dark mode, or do you not care about dark mode? We can furthermore kind of build that direct relationship, and you can pick out problems before you go to press. So one thing that I did when I was at my previous role is before we put paid ads into anything or put a campaign behind anything, we'd throw it to the community. And if they were like, you guys are crazy, we'd be like, okay, maybe don't put paid ads behind that one. We can also learn and kind of be lean and achieve a lot with little resources. So if you do your product well, guess what? You're gonna build natural fans. So Tess, I remember you're building that community of student athletes. In that format, what would be really great is if you had one student athlete was like, oh my goodness, because of your product, I got a full ride scholarship. And thank you so much. And you've now converted them into a brand advocate. So they're probably not going to need as much hand holding as anybody else in your community. So again, who can tell me the biggest pro to having a product-led community? If you just want to hover over, we kind of have different supporting communities, a big one. Users and product teams. Good. Yes, so we see a lot of the culture with supporting community. I think that's a really great point to bring up. I think I also want to give the caveat behind this. How many of you guys have had that boss that's like, Erin, what do you do all day? Do you just hang out on the internet and talk to people? Because like, I'm paying you. I'm like, I've definitely had that boss who's been like, give me your ROI on community. And you're like, okay, bud, like, I'll just crunch some numbers here. That is a really great perk, but is sometimes one of the hardest to quantify. You can't be like, someone gave me the most thumbs up emojis this week. That's not really a metric that people, especially like finance or business brains, really like. So I think that's a really great one. And I think that's a very valid one. And I don't want to discredit it at all. But when we think of things that we need to report on for those people who are less community minded, the kind of my go-to is I'm always like, here's my top 10 community members and here's what they want to see. And I almost give them a report on what people in my community think of, which is a weird kind of way of thinking about it. That being said, these product-led communities aren't perfect. So one, I was actually at an organization, one of the startups I worked for flamboyantly flamed out on the internet. I had to learn a lot on that. What's the plan if that community goes under? So write an exit strategy. If the community, your community goes under and your organization goes under, who's responsible for maintaining that community? Product-led organizations also have limited incentives to promote competitors. So one example that does this really well is actually Glossier with their Into the Gloss blog. They've actually done a really good job of determining who's supporting their competitors and how do they do it. Product-led communities, again, we have that crazy boss scenario where they need to be profitable or contribute to the product. So if you're not proving instant kind of return on investment, where your boss can't be like, you brought me X dollars this week, that might be your butt on the chopping block. They're also not as prioritized as they can be. So sometimes we treat community like an afterthought, or the appropriate resources aren't delegated to it, which sets it up for failures. And last, product-led communities can have a lot of red fucking tape. I want to like triple underline that, profanities for a reason. We are using that because product-led communities can be hard. You can come in and have a brand guideline come by and say, I don't think you should talk about our brand that way in this community. And then you get sidelined by a branding agency. You get sidelined by the CEO who doesn't understand the value of it. You get sidelined by tight budgets or time and resources. So these are some product-led problems that we see in community building that we need to be aware of for the future of community. So as we're continuing to build in this space, if we're not taking these considerations seriously in a thought, we need to make sure that we're doing these things. But I think the biggest thing, and I come from a weird background, so I'm a journalist turned product thinker turned community builder. So I stumbled into community myself, but I also think that gave me a weird way of thinking and how I approach communities. Community at the end of the day significantly impacts the product development process. So one, it changes the way that we build better relationships with our users. So by talking to users, my thing to any new community manager, or even kind of, I have someone who reports to me in my current role. And one thing that I ask them is, tell me the top 10 most active community members each week. So I ask, and that's the question I go, I'm like, tell me the top 10 community members this week. If you cannot name your top 10 community members, you've got a problem. So for anybody managing a community professionally, make sure that you're taking time to name your top 10 community members. If you don't know what they're doing, you're not taking the time and building the relationships appropriately. And that doesn't mean it's one of those relationships like an MLM. So I always see that the multi-level marketing gets a really bad rap for this. Hey girly, what's up? I thought you'd like to try something new today. We've all heard it 1,000 times. Let's not look at community building that way. That's super inauthentic, but maybe it's, you know, hey Julie, I'm picking on you just because I see you right up front of my screen. But hey Julie, I know that you're building this product. Can I try it? Can I give you some feedback? Or, hey, oh my goodness, I just wanted to check in. How are you doing today? Like, how are you doing today can tell you a lot more than you ever thought, because you'll never know. And when you're asking how you're doing today, I think the other thing is people often expect you to go, good, I'm great. Just move on with whatever you're doing. I don't really want to have this conversation right now. Give your community members space to say, hey, I'm not okay. Hey, I'm struggling. Hey, things aren't going well. That'll give you the best product feedback ever. I've had community members been like, hey, your product sucks, X, Y, Z, Y. And I'm like, wonderful, I can actually do some actionable things with that. Going, I'm great, Erin, please don't talk to me again, doesn't do anything. So creators are also very investingly driving that product development. So as I mentioned, our circle of in open source, something we pulled from the open source world, platforms are driven by creators. So without people tweeting on Twitter, Twitter is not of value. So by talking to what those creators want, you know how to build the best product for them, which keeps creators on your platform, which turns creators into your brand advocates. If you're not building a good product and you're not listening to them, if they came up with a Twitter with an edit button, how many people would we lose to it if it had all the same users? So think about it in that way. Investors. So investors will also increasingly looking at community buy-in. Do I think that this will probably go away once we're over this hype cycle? Yes, but currently investors are looking at how many members of the community you have excited. One metric that we can prove for investment, if you're going for those precious, precious VC dollars, is the metric of how many people actually have demand or desire for your projects. Can you create a Roam cult? Can you build that Notion workflow? can you have that no code investment? And I think lastly, we have communities are still part of a business. So determining success and writing out that roadmap is essential to product-led communities. And I'll add, writing out that roadmap needs to include what happens when it goes wrong. What happens if your product fails? What happens if you don't have the resources to maintain that community? What happens if you have a competitor come into your community? What do those pitfalls look like, and how does that change how your community is kind of building forward? Any questions, comments, or concerns? I know we've got a few people with product-led communities here, so if you have a specific thing that you want to stop and learn on, I'm happy to kind of work through it. All right, looks like we're golden. We're moving on. I feel like doing this on a trackpad is, all right, this is our horror. We know Halloween just passed, but it is not important kind of to segue into that community program. I'm going to tell you a very story. 6 months ago, I would have cried. Now we just laugh. I worked at an early stage SaaS startup. It is no longer available. I lost my job. I had to go find a new role. The big TLDR is we never planned for that exit strategy. No one thought we were geared up for a Series A. Everything was looking golden. There was a very public founder implosion on the internet. We had to manage that. As part of the founder implosion, they revoked all of my access to social media and all the communities. So I was now on the outside looking in. My DMs were a nightmare. Couple of things that could have done to prevented this. One, exit strategy. First and foremost, actually before that, take care of each other. Mental health is important. You are far less likely, I don't know if there's a public statistic to this, to have a public implosion if you don't take care of your mental health. So step one, take care of your mental health. Step two, make an exit strategy. If your community gets overtaken, overrun, your public your company implodes, what do you do? Have the hard conversations. Practice in your head. What if everything fails? You need to run through these exercises. Even if they're tough, uncomfortable, make you cringe, give you kind of the squirmy wormies in your gut, you've got to do them. What are your community pet peeves? Identify, I'm moving all the screen all over the place, but let's take a moment and I want you to identify your community pet peeves. So put a meme, tell me the person you don't like, what drives you nuts when someone comes into your community and does whatever. We've all got one. And this is like, I want to consider this like the safe, sacred space. If you're like, ooh, I don't know if I want to put something on my internet without that. Feel free, put it here. This is a safe space. And I put 2 of mine in there. So people who spam with self-promotion, yes, you should have very strict rules and setups of like, when should you or should you not have some self-promotion? Dominates every single conversation for sure. It's so cringe. You're like, please, let's have a back and forth conversation. Product lies, yes, do not lie. Like my mom always used to tell me when you're growing up, don't lie, cheat, steal. And I feel like that's a pretty basic understanding, but you would be shocked. My 2 big ones are devil's advocate. You know, the person who goes in the conversation and they're not looking necessarily to be a devil's advocate. They're just like say if they came to this conversation, they're like, I just don't like community building. And you're like, okay, thank you, bud. But like, what's the purpose? Like, oh, I just wanted to be devil's advocate. Oh, like, I don't mind a differing opinion, but let's have a conversation about it. Just, I didn't like that. And also I think the big one here is just plain not nice. We're all human here. This world's a bit brutal. This year has been a little bit brutal. Let's just be kind to each other. You gotta be nice to one another. That's a-okay. We gotta just, world is a small place. Just be nice. It's okay. No name calling, no anything else. So in this community graveyard, I want us to go find those I want us to go find pictures of like, what do we think kind of want to move forward? So what are those community, like if we're planning our absolute cringiest, worst case scenarios, what does our community look like? And I know that's a really hard one. What community on the internet, of that circle of people that you're just like, ugh, I'm gonna stay 10 feet away from, what does that look like? And these can be anything from, I love the person saying, no one's saying anything. That's a great one. Deep ideological fractures. Founder is setting a bad example. Great one. I think especially in this era, as we've all come to admire the Tim Cooks and the Elon Musks of the world, we have a lot of founder-centric relationships. And so sometimes when you have a rough founder, that can be a really interesting relationship we've got on. Obvious subtweeting, yes. It's never a good one. So I'm actually going to tell you a little bit of my favorite community to lurk in. And I say lurk because it kind of makes me cringe a little bit. There is a public Snopes forum, and it is a 4,000 person group on Facebook that they have not moderated. So Snopes, the credible fact-checking website, what happens when it's not moderated? You get some crazy things in there. If you are a fact-checking website, you should probably have moderation, because it's definitely a, you know, they post things like this deep state actor, and you're like, dude, chill. Like, let's, like, it's not, we're not doing some of these like weird, cringy, you know, if you're a fact-checking website, your forums should probably be fact-checked as well. Just kind of a kind of a good general thought. So on this, I want us to kind of go into the no one saying anything of this. So yes, those communities that you all join and you're like, it's gonna be great, and then nothing happens. Bad examples, great. It's obvious subtweeting. Yes, let's make sure that we're building kind of really positive ones. I wanna zoom in on like the deep ideological fractures. So one thing we all know, that it's kind of a tense political climate. I'm a big believer of have the hard conversations. So, you know, there's a difference of like ideological fractures. Like it's so deep that you're challenging someone's rights. Yeah, that's get out. Like we don't need to be challenging each other's rights. It's 2020. We're all kind of good people here. But if it's kind of so deep that we can't have a civil conversation, that's a problem. But we should be able to have civil conversations about it. If Julie was like, hey, I like peaches, and I'm like, actually, I don't like peaches. Peaches are the most terrible fruits. Remember, those are differences of opinion when we're talking about someone's rights. That is not a difference of opinion. That's just a fundamental right. So kind of going into that, we had those communities, we talked a little bit about it, those communities that flop, disintegrated, or internet icky places. There is actually an article that is linked to at the end of this of how 4chan came to be 4chan. So 4chan, for those of you who are not aware, is kind of one of those deep, icky places of misinformation and hate on the internet. It actually came to be 4chan, and a new investigative study is because one of their moderators allowed it to happen. So they actually did some research and found that a moderator, about 8 years after the inception of the site, decided to go rogue and start posting hateful and misinformation on the site. So one moderator disrupted and derailed the entire site for the rest of history. So when you're thinking of moderation and developing good things, let's make sure that we're building tools in place that we can do that. So taking moderation seriously is something that we're going to be having to do a little bit more in the future. So, and I think we need to do moderation, but previously, unfortunately, white cis men, I'm just going to say it, have kind of taken the lead on building these platforms. And I'm not saying that to be like, oh, white cis men are terrible, but let's be real. Let's kind of encourage diversity in the ways that we build moderation within these platforms. All right, thought exercise. So as I said earlier, the best way to prevent your community from going rogue is planning how your community goes rogue. So tell me, what is like where do you see your community going rogue? And so I can see this talk going rogue. I will tell one scenario. So in that thing that Julie and I talked about, where I created a mall in a spreadsheet and we did shopping sprees, within the first 44 hours, there's the unwritten rule of the internet called Rule 34 that says anything that can and will be porn will become porn on the internet. Within less than 24 hours of us launching this community project, we had porn all over my beautiful project. And I had to go in and clean it all up. So anytime we have an open forum, I'm going to go ahead and put this nice Rule 34. It will become porn. So setting in that moderation to do that. Yes, love the NCAA one. That's a very good one, especially fitting in your community. Spam, spam, and more spam. How many people are going to get those LinkedIn thought influencers? Because I try to stay away from them as much. I love the First Amendment. Whoever is putting that First Amendment right in there, one of the best articles I've ever read about community moderation is, this is my server and you are not subject to my description of fairness. So saying that and putting that rule out there is a really great one. People using the community to do bad things, yes, or hold up bad ideas. Like, I'm sorry, like we don't need to hold up these bad ideas. Perfect. Uniform writing. Awesome. All right. Anybody else had anything else? Anybody else writing? Wanted to make sure I don't leave anything out. All right. As we build in the future, especially COVID-19 and this rise of community has caused community to happen in a bunch of different forms. So that being said, we saw Clubhouse, we saw Discord, we saw AOC hosted an Among Us night, which was quite exciting if you attended. That was very fascinating. Whatever we saw, what are you seeing in community that's new that you would like to explore? So what cool trends or things that you're seeing that you're like, hey, I haven't gotten a hold of that and I want to try that yet. So like for me, I want to get into more interactive fun things. See Julie bouncing up. I'm all about the good fun interactive things.
I've been thinking about it this whole pandemic. Like, there's lots of fun stuff we could do. We just gotta get creative.
We gotta get creative. I'm all about it. I love the interactive. So I hope you guys are enjoying this format. If not, you know, well, want your feedback at the end no matter what. Tell me this sucks if it sucks.
No, this is awesome. This is working out great.
Perfect. Icebreakers, that's a good one. Video messaging, love it. I think especially as we're all about to kind of go into winter, and I'm a grumpy person in winter without a pandemic. I don't like being cold. So that's kind of an interesting, how can we stay in touch with people without ever having to put on pants? Luma events, nice. I haven't played around with that one yet. Mira, good one. Admittedly biased today. Better live events that help build community connections within each other instead of just a broadcast. You betcha. Let's talk about that. integrating online courses with community. Wink, wink, nod, nod. I'm actually working on something like this. I've got something up my sleeve. So perfect. More interactive, fun things. Awesome. These are all really fun community things. And I think we're all tired of it. How many people had to be on a Zoom call way too long at least one day this week? I mean, it's Tuesday. Have we already done that? Like, I'm already on Zoom calls way too long. I work with a lot of scientists and engineers, and let me tell you, I love them to death, but they like to give me a full formula. And I'm like, guys, where's the Cliff Notes versions? Because this is a 6-hour-long Zoom call that we do not need right now. Academia as well is kind of suffering in its own right. We like to have the long, long, long Zoom calls without a purpose. So here's the two that I kind of think have the most potential at this current moment. So I love the interactive, I love these things, and these are two different ways that I can think it go down. So audio communities, I actually wrote a guide on audio moderation because I don't think we've figured it out quite yet. So I'll be shooting that over to you guys who attended afterwards. But here's two things. So one, we're seeing a lot of audio-based communities. For those of you who are aware, it was kind of kickstarted by Clubhouse, that voice chatty app that's had its own controversial things for being a little hateful and a little cringy and a little VC in there. But because of that, people started building the non-exclusive Clubhouse. So does everybody kind of have a decent understanding of what Clubhouse is? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I think you guys are all pretty well. I see some neutral. So Clubhouse is an audio app that took off. It was most made pretty famous because they got a bunch of celebrities and a bunch of influential people in tech on the platform, which was great until they started being a little cringy. There was I come from a journalist background, so there was some journalists that were harassed on the app and made it just not a very safe space or fun place. So there's a bunch of new audio startups that have kind of risen to take the spot. We've seen Chalk app, we've seen Space app, we've seen Eternal, which was around for a little bit, and I believe it's still kind of trying to find its footing. But people are kind of rushing because it offers the perks of a video call. Hey, we're doing some real-time synchronous audio, but hey, you don't have to show your face. So if you want to sit in bed on your pajamas on a Tuesday night, by all means, have a great time. The problem is it is a very difficult platform to moderate. So if someone says really blatantly racist, sexist, homophobic, or disgusting online, what can you do to moderate that? You can't flag that to a moderator. You can't go forward. You can't put pause. You can't raise a red flag. You have to kind of just call it out like it is. So for some people, that makes moderation a little bit difficult, or you can't record a conversation. So, that makes it a little bit difficult on that. So moderation is proving to be a little bit of a tricky point, because how can you even replay that if it's live audio? So there's a couple things that we've got to work on here with moderation. On this, we see the evolutions of the gaming community. So one, it's a really niche community. So we saw Discord has been around actually for a while now. I believe 8 to 10 years of Discord. We all know of it if you were an online Call of Duty player or I always remember my brother playing Call of Duty, so that's the one that comes to brain. But there's other ways that people are playing games online and communicating through Discord. But Discord actually recently announced that they're going to be using community building tools across the board, which is awesome. We're going to be using Play a lot more to communicate. So like we saw, for those of you who caught the live event of Among Us, or how many people have played a game of Among Us during this pandemic? We've got a few. So if we have a few Among Us players here, it's kind of a little bit of a phone game that's kind of captured the world by storm, especially in those niche communities. So it's a way of, for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a way of kind of playing Mafia. So kind of that killer sense of who did it sort of situation. A lot of people are using Discord to create a group and gather, wow, cannot talk, by room. And we're creating this group, kind of sort of turning this event around, finding out new ways to do that. It is very rooted in an activity. So we are kind of building these ideals together. It is rooted in doing. So people who are playing a game together, you want to figure out, if you're playing Among Us, it's who did it. If you're playing Call of Duty, it's like the zombies. If you're doing Animal Crossing, like I spent way too much time in the early pandemic doing, it's who has what plant, so you can build the best flower gardens. That's very much my opinion. So it's whatever you're doing, it's rooted in an activity. So you're not just talking back and forth, but you're doing something together remotely. So I think the biggest thing is when we all went on lockdown, we all sort of craved this human connection. We all were like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do? How many people people did way too many like Zoom happy hours for the first month, and you're like, please don't invite me to another one of those. So we all kind of did the Zoom happy hours in the first month. And for many instances, community can and help us get through tough times. So I know a lot of us, like I had a couple friends invite me to a group watch of the election this night, and we're all watching it together on Zoom, which is a different way of approaching community. So different ways that we're building this in different times. So it's always been around, it's just different ways of doing it. And I know we're kind of coming to the end of time, but we might be running a little bit over unless anybody has any qualms. Julie gives me the heads up. But if you do have to dip, there is an end slide right here. I will be shooting out anybody who drops their email down. I will be shooting all of this out, including the links to it. So if you want guides on audio moderation, if you want guides on how to make Google Sheets really cool and interactive, if you want guides on, Miro and all the tools that were used to build this, I'm working to get those all out to you guys. So feel free, if you've got to jet, drop your email in there. I promise not to spam it or sell it on a high price on the internet. And drop it down and I'll make sure that you guys get that. So one thing we've seen a lot of resurgence as well is kind of old school cool again. So some things never change. So like I said, communities is old as the churches that we gathered in. What things have we seen come back this year and what things have brought you delight? So if you have anything fun, what things that are kind of have come back? I have one that's been holding me. Mario 64. I'm a bit of a nerd at heart. I'm actually in a Discord of all 64 emulators. So it's people who could not get enough of the Nintendo 64 and are just emulating the games online. But if you had something that maybe a little bit weird that have brought delight.
You're funny, aren't you, Fred? Oh, Dad. You're here.
Yes. You're home.
Going for long walks. I think we did all bring that kind of back in the pandemic.
Oh my God.
For a while.
Sorry?
I've been playing for a while.
Poker, nice one. So many campfires, good one. I grew up in Boise, Idaho, so by way of Portland, Oregon, I took a very weird route through everything. So I actually think I've been missing a little bit more of the outdoors, even though I'm in Brooklyn now. It's a weird. The virtual mall was kind of a fun one. So thanks, Julie, for.
Honestly, like such a highlight of my early quarantine. Absolutely.
Perfect. I'm so glad. So I think one thing we've kind of seen is there's different ways to bring an experience that we had offline and bring it online. And I think we should not limit ourselves to what it is. Like I said, I've been playing more video games than I've ever played in my entire life. Oh my goodness, Murder Mystery Party. I need to come to some of your events. You guys are having way too much fun in them. So there's new old platforms that have been around for a while that are coming back. So actually even like the platform that MakerPad is on right now is based off of an old school forum, which we saw a lot, or like Hacker News or any of those kind of things. We've seen that forums have been around forever. Reddit is kind of having a little bit of a resurgence right now. Discord, originally used for gaming. I'm in like way too many Discords right now. Email, I think, is another one. I think we forget how simple and lovely email delight is. How anybody knows someone or started their own newsletter during a quarantine? Like we've all got someone writing a personal newsletter now. Believe it or not, these are all different ways to build communities. There's the Google Docs or Sheets. So like I mentioned, I built a virtual mall in Google Sheets, but there's other things that you can do within Google Sheets. So I have a friend, she's from Pakistan, and she's actually doing a project all on different ways that women in Pakistan are actually gathering, because they're in a little bit of a, they're going through and they're like, how do women around the globe that grew up in Pakistan are relating to similar experiences? And they're doing it through Google Docs. And they're writing like letters to each other, which I think is the most like cool, like weird, like scenario. It shouldn't say weird, but it's a cool scenario of like different ways of approaching this problem rather than just sending emails back and forth. It becomes like a sort of catalog of stories to read, which is a really beautiful thing to think about. And it's a different way of sharing someone's experiences. And I also like to think of the different things that we do throughout our day to day, but a new execution of it. So cooking shows. So I knew someone who did a cooking show on Zoom, or a happy hour, or even grassroots organizing. We saw a lot of this happen in different formats this year. Let's have some fun experimental time. What can you come up with? I think if anybody was on Twitter last night, Alton Brown notoriously got drunk and drunk tweeted last night, which was probably one of the funniest things I saw happen on Twitter recently. So if you guys are a fan of Alton Brown, there's some interesting things there to do. I'm gonna put Iron Chef asynchronously. If anybody has some fun, creative ways to get involved, I'd love to hear it. I don't like how I can only see like the 4 people in these forums when you do when you screen share. Design game nights, awesome. Right, I like these ideas, and I know it's always hard for some people to brainstorm on the spot. Normally, I'm not a very good brainstorm on the spot person. I'm like, give me 24 hours and I'll get back to you on that. Ooh, record a live podcast virtually. I like that one. I really dig that one. I think there's some interesting things that you can do. You can even have some guest interaction. Async costume design contest. I do dig that. Did anybody have any really awesome Halloween costumes they want to share this year? Virtual food court only counts if we can get virtual food delivery as well. So
I was talking to somebody about that had connections at Grubhub.
I would love that. Please deliver it to my front porch. All right. I think these are all great ideas. I think one thing that we should see more in community is instead of just kind of doing the same thing, let's not be afraid to get out of the box. So, you know, if we had, I saw from our very first slide, we had someone dabbling in open source. What does open source look like? So how can we do, you know, community code hackathons remotely on the weekends? Or, you know, if we're doing sports, what does that look like from a sports perspective? Can we do a virtual, I do fantasy baseball every so often. I'm pretty absolutely terrible at it. But what's the equivalent of it when sports are kind of shut down from the pandemic? Or even like an explainer sessions. Like these are some fun things we can think about. And I think no matter what we have, kind of as we're wrapping things up, I want us to think about what is your community constitution? So what does your community stand for? What does your community guidelines say? And what is your community things? Because some things are never going to change. Your community may evolve, but you know, I think and what it looks like may evolve. So we might be moving from Zoom to audio first platforms, but the things our community values will never, ever, ever change. So personally, like I run a neurotech community right now. And one thing that's important is the community is pretty focused around neurotech. Like we're not talking about puppies and kitties really, like, and rainbows and butterflies. It's like we're pretty much focused on the practical applications of neurotech and neuroscience. So what are you focused on? And I can even say, like, I like to put down the basic don't be an asshole rule. And I say that like, hey, don't be a jerk. Don't be a hateful person. If you have hate, you gotta go. And that's kind of my like blanket rule. Like, we don't have time to be hateful. We can just call it like we see it. So what are important to you in your community? So what values do you hold true? It can be anything from, we talk about a specific topic. I like to use the metaphor of a brunch. So a brunch club, you're not eating dinner. You're not getting happy hour drinks. You're not, you know, planning a murder mystery party. You're a brunch club. What does your community stand for? And they can be as simple as, I'm going to put a few down. So respectful conversations are super important. Fighting for freedom. Good. Being helpful. Supportive. I like this one. This is another rule I've used a lot. Coming from a place to understand. So what does that look like? So again, my pet peeve of, I don't know why my font is so big, but you know, is the person who's like devil's advocate and you're just like, please, dude, no. But you're actually like, hey, I would love to know more about JavaScript. Please tell me more about JavaScript. Adding value through content for community members. It's a really good one. We've all been in those communities that you're like, I could have Googled this. And if that's a good kind of rule of thumb of like, if you're providing something that's Google-ish, add some additional value, whether it's a personality, whether it's a fun way of explaining something, you know, whatever that is, make sure you're adding that little value. Perfect. So I think this is a really good one. And the best way to define these things is by talking to your community members. So when you're doing your check-ins and I'm asking you for your 10 top community members, make sure that you're also like, you know, this is Julie. Julie really cares about puppies and she cares about rainbows. So I need to make sure as I'm building my communities, 8 of the top 10 people in my community wanted more puppy content. And so that would be a metric that you would use to kind of scale your community. So when you're planning out your content calendar, then you're like, oh my goodness, I know that 8 of the 10 of my top community members really like puppies. Now I know that puppies are of value to them. Or if you had a bunch of people recently leave your community, ask them why. Be like, well, sometimes it can be as easy as, well, I didn't use your software anymore. Sometimes it can be, hey, so-and-so is being a big jerk in the community. And that's something to kind of keep aware of. I love this, like the quality of discussion. So are we getting deep into that good, juicy context? So there's a lot of like those little communities that I'm in. There's actually this community I'm in on journalism. So I'm in a community for people who worked in the journalism field. And one thing that we do is like, how do you cover COVID-19 remotely? And how do you report on that? That's a really interesting one because there's a lot of different ethical conversations of like, should you be going out and reporting on these things? So quality of conversations that inspire new ones and kind of make you a better ones. Engagement, good. And we're looking for that true engagement, not just the, I liked it, right? It doesn't really help any of that. So that engagement of really like, hey, that was a really great comment. I love to hear that you kind of brought up a great point. Posting open-ended questions, love that. Wanting to know more resources about it. I think all of these things are kind of a byproduct of us having an open-ended question posed at us. What things are important to you in your community? You can't really answer yes or no to that one. Good, I like that one. Community has a life of its own. That's a really good one to strive for. So as we're growing, that one's hard to get up front because as you get going and you have very little members, it's a lot harder to do. But as you grow, that'll naturally become part of it. So I love that one. That's a really great one. All right. This is what happens, software issues. There we go. All right, so as we remember, kind of our constitutions will determine our values and our rights of our group. So you have 2 parts to this. You have to go, hey, these are what's important to my group, and B, I actually have to work for it. So I have to make sure that I'm keeping those community promises. So as we kind of get forward, how do we build those community promises to our community? So if it's respectful conversations, how do I make sure that we're having respectful conversations? How do I make sure that people in our community are actually being civil? If I want true engagement, I need to start by doing the action that I want. So kind of you have to be your own best community member. And I think that's something, and if you have a team and you're like, hey, we're launching a community this week, I see the same thing happening. So if you're a team and say Julie was launching a community this week, Julie would get our team together and be like, guys, we're launching a community this week. Here's what I expect from you. Here's our community constitution. And much like any other constitution, it can be changed and edited, but these things shouldn't be changed and edited easily. They should be kind of really thought through when they're made a change. So we're making a change because 20 out of our top 50 community members say that they'll never come back to this community as of tomorrow unless we do X, Y, Z. And then you take in that consideration and you go, is this something we should be taking seriously? Or do they not like the color purple and the software we use is purple? Like, let's think about what makes a realistic change. Or, you know, if we all decided that we hated Ariana Grande's new album, then is that a valid reason? Is that relate back to your community? Is that a reason to leave the community? Because you'll be surprised or not, there's some people get a little silly on the internet, and just kind of having the open conversations with someone to make sure that it's a healthy, respectful place to be. And so I think as we dive in, you have to kind of ask your community these questions. So when you're doing those like informal user polls, make sure that you're future-proofing your community by asking these questions. So again, anytime that someone shares about your community, that's a really good flag. Why did people join your community? What promises do you make? What do people keep coming back for? And then how do you protect that for years to come? And you will have to mix things up. Maybe the software you're using, like for example, if Miro was no longer going to be around tomorrow, how would I have to change this? Would I have to change it if I'm only using this for a presentation today? These are questions that you should ask to make sure that you're future-proofing your community. What if you're working on a Facebook group and Facebook no longer just poof off the earth tomorrow? How would your community need to evolve? And how would you need to kind of communicate that to your community? So making sure that you're doing the appropriate steps to make sure that you're communicating those end steps properly. Again, making an exit strategy, even if it's really weird to say that your community will not exist, is something that we should be thinking through a lot more often. So yeah, unless you have any questions, I'm gonna go ahead and drop this up here. Have an awesome time. I'm here, wow, cannot talk. I'll be here hanging around if anybody has anything, but go ahead. If you have the link, I can drop it again. Drop your email and I'll send over a toolkit of all the kind of different things we talked about and different things that we'll be working on. So feel free to kind of drop me any questions, comments, concerns. If you were like, oh my goodness, this was great, or oh my goodness, this is terrible, I think those are both two things that I would love to hear about. So feel free to shoot me an email myself. I'm always open to feedback and how we can be better. Again, you've got to be your own kind of user tester some days. So if I can get a quick poll of like, this was awesome or this is terrible, let me know by just kind of waving your hand on the screen. If you learned something today, that's an added bonus. But until then, I'll be hanging out for a quick sec. Be nice, do good things.
Thank you so much, Erin. I love the interactive bits of this, and I think this was an amazing use of Miro. I've been using Miro for doing like build sessions and virtual hackathons, and this is awesome.
Cool. Yeah, I'm like trying to like figure out different ways that we can use the same. I'm very curious about like tools. So if anybody has any like fun tools they're using, I'd love to hear about it if anybody has any fun ones. And I think I learned about a few new things today, so always appreciate and think that. So always happy for that. I also love Jackson, and you've got a baseball mural behind you. I'm like, what?
Yeah, who's your baseball team if you're a baseball fan?
I am a huge baseball fan. So I'm married to someone who's from Kansas City and is a Royals fan. But I actually grew up, so my family's all Pacific Northwest, so Seattle Mariners, but my dad score kept for the Cubs. So I'm like a Mariners Cubs fan.
Okay, nice. Erin, if I could ask you a question, I used Elliot and I thought it was great on the marketing side. I don't know, kind of whatever happened. I'm curious what your thoughts are on like the balance between, you know, you want to have a community to launch to, and there's this like build in public kind of idea that Fast is using right now. Like, how would you balance the two? Because it felt when I used Elliot, like everything was great. It just felt like the community was awesome and the product lagged a little bit. So like, how do you kind of balance those two so that you don't get the community too excited just yet, and everything like that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that's a perfect question. I think that's something, you know, obviously in aftermath, hindsight is 20/20, right? Is I think we would have better relationships with the product team. So your community, I think, should not be your community should not be under marketing. Like, you have this like weird bridge roles. So when I came from a news background. I have a master's in journalism and then ran in tech. So there's a whole other side story there. But I think of that same philosophy. So in newsrooms, you have this concept of a bridge role. So a bridge role marries two parts of a newsroom. So whether it's fact checking and editorial, you make sure that everything is published as accurate and good information. So what you do is, ideally, we have community member bridge roles. So community members that are product community managers. What I do think is a downside is we're building community faster than we're building anything else right now, which, as I said, when we're going up on this hype train, it's a very terrifying train for some ways, because you also get a quote unquote a lot of experts, and I don't consider myself an expert by any means. I've just kind of stumbled into learning and doing and have studied in this realm. I don't think I'm very much of the attitude like there's no right answer, there's no wrong answer. Just don't be an asshole, for lack of a better, be a nice person. And come from a wanting to understand, not a devil's advocate. So I do think that as we grow and scale communities, I hope that we have more community bridge roles. So someone from your community is sitting on a product team.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So yeah, I hope that was a good answer. I know that's kind of I don't want to be the cop-out answer of we need to build more succinctly, but I think, we've got to think about community ties to product development more often than it doesn't.
Yeah.
I have a question. Just from the perspective of starting out, if you have a community and nobody's there yet, what your thoughts are on seeding conversations or getting things started, or how to get people there in the first place, especially for instance if your business is just launched or is launching, or things like that, but very early days.
Yeah, I think that's a really great one. I think that's probably one of the hardest things. So if your community is very starting, I have a twofold answer to that. So if you haven't launched your community and you don't know if you can handle the resources of a community, I would actually do some homework first. So I would actually scrounge the internet and be who has a community that the people that I want to talk to are in, to do the piggybacking approach, and then find their community manager or moderator and be hey, oh my goodness, blah, 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 blah. I'd love to chat, and kind of build those partnerships. And then maybe you don't actually need to make your own community. Maybe you're doing a community that's a partnership of something else. Maybe there's a college sports group on Facebook. Maybe you can just work and be we'll sponsor this community versus coming up and creating our own. There are some cons to that. You have less control over it. You have kind of less viability with it, but it could all flop on its face. So it's if you don't know if you can commit the resources to it, that's kind of a good first step. If you're nope, we're committed, we're taking the community route, we've got it, we've got the forum, we've got everything set up, we've got moderation, we've got all these things in place, what's the next step? The best thing to do, and this sounds almost hyper or polar of what what community building things to me, is start the one-on-one relationships. So that means sliding into someone's DMs and hitting up hey, how are you doing? What's going on? How can I help you? What are things that we can help you out with? And it's just kind of building those one-on-one relationships. And then, I don't want to say it's a transactional, but it's a back and forth. It's hey, I'll scratch your back. Oh my goodness, you're doing this thing. I would love to support it or sponsor it, and then do it. So when I was at Elliott, one thing that we did very successfully is we actually got a lot of early streetwear brands, not because we necessarily knew streetwear, but because we went on streetwear startup on Reddit and literally just bought people's products. Every day I had a budget and I just would shop people's products, and I'd be oh my goodness, you're building the coolest thing ever. I love what you're building. I love what you're doing. And then I executed. And I was telling them, and then they'd be oh my goodness, so what do you do for a living? And I'd be oh, I work at Elliott, I'm building this community, so on and so forth. Right now I'm building a science and an educational community. And I'm also helping out with some community for a beauty brand. So as I'm building both a science community and a beauty brand, those seem very different. But at the end of the day, I'm still doing the same things. For my science community, I'm having conversations with technical applied neuroscientists and neuroengineers that are working with folks with disabilities or who are differently abled. And it's I'm talking to them and being okay, tell me about your research this week. What did you learn? People love talking about themselves. We all do. It's kind of one of those little known human facts, and it does come full circle. So I know that's kind of another weird cop out, but you know, have the conversation, build the relationship, and invite them in. And it's
For sure.
been
Yeah,
great.
I was just going to ask if you're, so just to that example that you're
Yeah.
doing right now, you know, are you having those conversations, I guess, I'm assuming probably on like Twitter or something like that? And then eventually, you know, if they pop over to, I'm assuming it's a built
Yeah.
platform or something, not hosted on something else. Is that kind of the way you're going about it?
Yeah, we have one that's a Discord chat, and then we have a Reddit forum, and then we have a Slack channel. So like,
Okay.
and there are different levels. So like our Slack channel is co-sponsored by a national organization. So like I have a 15,000 person Slack channel that I manage right now, all full of scientists, which is like a global science initiative. It's a very different, like, not because it's not a public facing community. So I build relationships a lot differently. But I think for the main point, it's a lot of like building that relationship. And then when they go, you know, Erin, what are you up to? And it's like, it's a good place for me to be like, I'm building this right now. What would you like to see in a community? So a lot of times people like, sometimes they won't be able to answer it, but sometimes they'll be like, oh my goodness, I would love a place that I could hear from, you know, a lot of what I get is a lot of people who are building in, you know, wearable devices for neurotechnology. So it's like, okay, who's building that? Then I can be like, great, we're currently talking about that in our community. Would love to have you here. Or there's other folks like you that are here. You know, so for a beauty brand, like what we do is we're doing a lot of live events. So we send out emails to our top customers. So if you purchase over a certain amount of product per month, you get an invitation and you get to have a happy hour makeup session with the founders. And it's less about, oh my goodness, come watch me do a smoky eye. It's a, hey, let's just sit down, get ready to gussy it up on a Friday night over Zoom and talk about our work and what we did this month. And it's kind of a, like, you know, when we'd all just go to the bar and have a good time and hang out with strangers in the before times. It's kind of a nice little way. Right?
Yeah, seriously.
Right?
Cool.
I'm like, we all used to do that.
Yeah, I know, right? Awesome.
But, and that's kind of one way we did it, is just very much like, many people, I think especially now with COVID, want a space to go. And kind of if we operate under the two principles of people want to talk about themselves and people want a space to belong, providing both of those are a really good one. So I'm a big fan of like, when people introduce themselves, get hyped, like be like, oh my goodness, you're doing blah blah blah, that is the coolest thing ever. Like, because sometimes, especially when you're not an outgoing person, coming into a new community can be really hard. So if you come in and no one says hi or no one's excited for you to be here, and then someone with 10,000 followers comes in and you're like, all of a sudden you're like, ah, you've kind of now set your community up to fail, because you're not actually caring about your community. You're caring about the person with 10,000 followers. And by all means, if you're going to do that, go hire an influencer. Like, that's not where the purpose is. So I hope that was insightful.
You are the social chameleon, Erin.
Thanks. Yeah, it lurks. My parents told me not to like interact with strangers on the internet, and I managed to make a living with it. So, but it's not bad. I'm pretty an open book if anybody else needs anything. So I know it's kind of always weird asking questions on the internet sometimes to a random stranger, but I'm open and I'll shoot you guys those resources over if you need it. My email's available, so hit me up if you have anything.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank
See
you.
you guys.
Thanks a bunch.
Have a good
Thank
one.
you.
No problem. Have a good one.